Okay, so I just want to welcome everyone to this webinar. I'm Kylie Hanish, and I'm the founder of Return to Zero Hope. We're going to be talking today with a panel of fathers who've all experienced the loss of their baby during pregnancy or infancy. And I feel so very grateful to have these four men here with me who are willing to be open and vulnerable and share their stories with each other and with all of you. And I think what's really important is, if you are a grieving father, to know that you are not alone in this journey. And that's probably my biggest goal for this webinar. And then also just to understand, like, what is the experience of a bereaved father like? Because we don't talk about this. It can be very isolating. And being able to hear other people's stories can be so validating in our own experiences and make us feel less alone. So a little bit about me before we get started. My son Norbert was stillborn at 35 weeks back in 2005. And it was the point in my life there was the before and the after. And it fast forward many years, we made the film Return to Zero, and now really devoting my life to helping people share their stories, helping bereaved parents feel less alone, and also helping to educate and empower health providers so they can better support families going through perinatal loss. I'm going to start by introducing our panelists. So first, we have Alex Kaysen. He's in the blue there. He recently joined Return to Zero Hope as an advisory board member. He's a family physician in Baltimore, Maryland, and he practices obstetrics. And Alex and his wife lost their son, Anik, in July of 2018 due to prematurity and a congenital heart defect. So Alex was also participated in one of the Return to Zero support groups. And so that's how I met Alex initially. So Alex, thanks for being here. Tony Mitchell is there. He is in a tuxedo because he has to go to a wedding today. So he's looking very lovely. But Tony and his wife, Sanita, started a nonprofit organization called Anaya's Project, and they also live in Maryland. So this nonprofit is dedicated to their daughter, Anaya Simone Mitchell, and their primary mission is providing support to families who are coping with pregnancy and infant loss or fertility challenges. So Tony, thank you for being here as well. Jay Rose he's a clinical therapist here in Los Angeles. I'm in LA as well, so we're somewhat neighbors. He and his wife, Millie, have two children, a 5-year-old son named London and an angel baby, Layton, who was born sleeping at 32 weeks in 2020. And they are expecting another baby next month. So they're going through the pregnancy after loss journey right now. Jay, thank you for being here. Jay was also part of one of our support groups, and that's how I met him. Hansen Wong is joining us from Indianapolis. Hansen was also a member of one of our support groups, and he and his wife, Amy, experienced 2 pregnancy losses in 2020. Their daughters, Elsie, and another daughter, Evie. So 2 separate pregnancies. When Hansen is not working, he enjoys his time spending it with his wife. He likes to work out and collect artwork. And Hansen, I'm so grateful to have you here as well. Thank you. You have so many moments in our support group that, although you did not say a lot all the time, everything that comes out of your mouth is so thoughtful and poignant and just really stuck with me. So I'm excited to have you here. And just again, thank you, all of you, for being here with us. So I'm going to start by asking you to share a little bit about your loss experience with your partner, a little bit about your story so that we can get to know you that way. I will let you unmute yourselves as you feel compelled to speak.
I can start. Oh,
no, go ahead, Alex.
sure. Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Kylie, for having me, and it's really an honor to be in this meeting, in this webinar with other attendees who, especially those of us who've experienced pregnancy loss. I always feel this unspoken connection when I'm in a group of people who've gone through this tragic journey, and just hard to put into words, but you definitely feel a sort of kinship. And those of you who are providers, clinicians, any type of support person for people who have gone through this experience, definitely really honored to be with you all. So as far as my journey, my wife and I, we've been married nearly 10 years. And a few years after we got married, we decided that we were going to try have a baby. Never did it occur to us that we would have any difficulty. We're both very healthy people, fortunately. And after a year went by, a little bit more, we realized there might be a problem. So that kind of led us onto the initial stages of infertility workups and treatment. And that's when we experienced our first miscarriage. It was early on. And that was kind of my first introduction to any kind of pregnancy loss. I had already been working as a physician at that time, and I've dealt with it from a professional standpoint, but definitely the experience and the impact was something I had not previously thought about as deeply. But we got through that and decided to pursue IVF, and it was a little bit, I think we were given the impression that it was going to be smooth, easy because of our age. At that time, early 30s, no health problems. We sort of took it for granted that, hey, we're just gonna do this, and the baby's gonna come in a year. So, lo and behold, it became really complicated, and multiple failed rounds and implantations. We finally managed to have a viable pregnancy. It was around that time in 2018 that we moved out of state. We were living in North Carolina and then moved to Maryland. So came to Maryland, set up, prenatal care. Things were going fine. We were both kind of starting new jobs. And then that's when things started to go wrong. So we went for our anatomy scan at around 19 or 20 weeks. And they found that our baby had a congenital heart defect called tetralogy of Fallot, which is not a super uncommon problem, but it would have required several open heart surgeries shortly after birth. So we, of course, began preparing ourselves emotionally and, setting ourselves up for the right type of medical care and what's going to happen. And we were settling into that routine of picturing what our life is going to look like. And about 5 or 6 weeks later, another problem started to occur. My wife began to have preterm contractions, and we rushed to the hospital. And of course, she was in full-blown labor. And with the medication and everything, they managed to stop the labor progress. And she stayed in the hospital 3 days, but then labor again took hold. And at that point, we had to make a really difficult decision on what to do, because we were in this gestational age range that was considered sort of viable, but with a really serious heart condition. The consultants, the neonatologists, did not give us a good prognosis on what would happen if we pursued aggressive resuscitation. So that's when we came together, our family, and sought spiritual guidance and decided that we were going to pursue comfort care and palliative care after the delivery, and not put our son through agonizing procedures and things that weren't likely to work. So that was July of 2018, and yeah, so that's my journey.
Thank you, Alex, for sharing. I'm so sorry for your loss.
All right. I think I'll go next. Again, my name is Tony Mitchell. My wife, Sunita, and I, we were married in September of 2009. We became a blended family. She had our two sons from a prior relationship. I didn't have any children coming in. And right after we got married, we found out that we were pregnant. So we were definitely excited about the opportunity and really looking forward to welcoming into the world either a baby boy or a baby girl. So, and this was my first time experiencing pregnancy, so it was all the more exciting. So everything was going well for the first 6 months, and then within the seventh month, that's when Sunita started experiencing contractions. And it got to the point where I had to rush her to the emergency room at the hospital to have it checked out. She was indeed having contractions. They gave her medication to stop the contractions, and she was released. That was on a Thursday. That Friday morning, the contractions came back, and they were even stronger than the previous day. So took Sunita back to the hospital. This time, it was discovered that she not only was having the contractions, but she was also dealing with a high fever, which caused an infection to be at the uterus area. So she was checked in that Friday night. We stayed in the hospital all Saturday. Uh, Round the clock care from the hospital staff, medications to try to treat both the contractions and the fever at the same time. Our baby was doing good. And then all of a sudden, that Sunday morning, when she was doing a breathing exercise, her water broke. So after that, it was a decision that had to be made to either deliver right then and there or wait till the next day. So the doctors decided to wait till Monday morning to actually deliver Anaya. And once she was actually delivered, I was immediately taken to the back in the NICU. And from there, even though Anaya was fully developed, her lungs were not. So they were performing CPR on her in order for her to breathe. So I had to make the really hard decision, which is still to this day the most difficult decision I've ever made in my life, was to stop these CPR proceedings and to let her transition in peace. And before that, we were able to have her baptized before she passed away in my arms. So from that moment on, it was a very difficult process, not only for myself and Sunita, but also for our two sons and everyone else that was connected to us. We did experience infertility for several years. And then at one moment, we actually were pregnant again, but it resulted in miscarriage very early in the pregnancy. We did go to a clinic specialist to do infertility treatments, but fortunately, before we were able to begin the first preceding procedure, Sunita was pregnant, and we were able at that moment to have our two rainbow children after that. So, and as a result of wanting to keep Anaya's legacy alive, we started Anaya's project in 2018. And this is our third year of operation within this nonprofit.
Thank you, Tony, for sharing your story. I'm sorry for your loss as well.
Okay, so I am Jonathan Rose. People call me Jay or John. My wife's name is Millie Rose, who's also participated with me in support groups. We've been married for 5 years. We have a 5-year-old son as well. You do the math. He came out perfectly healthy. So we thought that this would be easy for us. And that was in 2015. But in 2018, we had a miscarriage, which was pretty rough. And then we found out we were pregnant again in August of 2019. But there were little signs along the way that something was off. Like the doctor would tell us, like, so we found he only has a 2-vessel cord, but don't worry about that. It's not a big deal. Or we found this little speck of gray matter on his brain, but don't worry about that. It's not a big deal. And so it always gave us this weird feeling while we were pregnant with Layden. And so one day we go to see another doctor, and I'm waiting in the car actually, because this is during quarantine last year. And all of a sudden my wife calls me and tells me to come up, and the doctor tells us that at 32 weeks, Layden suffered a stroke. And so basically he's brain dead. And now we have to just see if he can make it to be delivered or if he will pass away before it's time. So at the time, his heart's still beating, everything like physiological with his brain was really off, but you could still feel his heartbeat. It felt like he was moving. So we started to come up with ideas about what this may look like if he comes out brain dead. What will we do? Is there a potential for him to have any kind of life once he's delivered? Nonetheless, he passed away 2 weeks later. And it was like you guys both said, it was heartbreaking. It hurt all of us. Obviously, it's only been about a year. Like his anniversary of his passing will be on the 25th. It's still really raw. It's still really tough to discuss and talk about. But we're gonna throw a balloon and butterfly release on his birthday to kind of celebrate him. After that, we actually suffered another miscarriage this past August. And about a month later, we found out we were pregnant again. But obviously it kind of colors how you feel about it. So we've made it pretty far. So we're excited, but we're still a little nervous about everything. But yeah, it's been a long journey. So I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to talk about it.
Thank you, Jay, for sharing your story and for being here.
It's my turn. My name is Hansen. Well, I'm happy to be here, and thank you for all of your sharing your experience. And my wife Amy and I have been married for 5 years, over 5 years, and we did not try to get pregnant until last year. Like we would wasn't really a trying. We just like, okay, get off birth control and see what happened. And then we found out we're pregnant, I think a little after March last year, and that's during COVID. And then she went to the doctor and got referred to the OB. And then she went to do her first ultrasound. And then we realized that she was already 12 weeks in. And see the ultrasound, see the baby feet kicking and all that stuff. So we're excited. So fast forward, because just during COVID, I could not go to the doctor appointment with her. So and she for the first few appointments, she just went by herself and did all the testing and all that stuff to make sure that nothing was wrong. And she did a screening test to make sure there's no Down syndrome, no any chromosome abnormality. And for the 20-week appointment, I actually went with her. drove her, but I was waiting outside in the parking lot at the doctor's office. And we didn't expect anything to go wrong. And she was the first appointment. Then so she FaceTime during the ultrasound. And then the ultrasound tech, that lady asked her asked her how long has that pregnancy been long. She said 20 weeks. Apparently, I mean, I think everything added up now. Apparently, like our baby never really grew from the 12 weeks ultrasound to the 20-week ultrasound. And then the most obvious sign that showed that something was wrong was the baby never moved during the ultrasound, because in the 12 weeks ultrasound, her feet was kicking, like just moving crazy. But the 20 weeks ultrasound was like night and day. She did not move at all. The whole time she was like curled around like this. And then the doctor said our baby was at the 1 percentile growth rate, so she was like really, really, really small. And then we got referred to see the specialist. Then we got in the very next day to see the specialist and see what was happening. So we went into the ultrasound. At first, I couldn't even go to that appointment. They said because of COVID, Amy was the only person could be in there. But somehow I was in there in the ultrasound room, but I could only stay for the ultrasound. When she go meet with the doctor, she will be outside. I will have to leave. But things like the thing is that when we start doing ultrasound, the doctor came in right away. So apparently she has the monitor in her office to see what's going on. So apparently a lot of things was wrong with our baby. So she came in right away and showed the ultrasound tech what to look for and stuff. And she said, okay, she had. So first of all, she said that's like the human brain, a 2-part left and right, and there's a middle part was missing. So the brains are not connected. So this is called a Dandy Walker syndrome. Then she also saw like our baby's hands and feet, they're all like fingers like this, or split down all the way down. And got club feet. It's like, I think they got like, they're all just not normal. And then there's also some heart defect. And then we went to see see another specialist for her heart. And for her, for that specialist, he was really optimistic. Said, okay, we can fix that, because this is not something that's too difficult to fix. But he also brought up at one point that he's only focused on that problem. That problem alone is not that bad, but the overall was like he cannot comment too much about it. And then we had a virtual meeting with a genetic counselor. She was going through all these different things with us. Like, why not? I don't even remember what she said, but we had to do more testing. Finally, like, we found out that our baby Elsie had the condition called triploidy. Is that she had an extra set of chromosomes for every single one. So a normal person is 46, she had 69. So when you're 69, you don't survive for that. But like we did more, like I did more study on triploidy. That a lot of baby had triploidy usually end up being miscarriage early in the pregnancy. It's very rare that a baby can survive that far. So and then 20 weeks. So and we were put in a very difficult situation because we're in Indiana. Indiana is a very, very red state. It's very conservative. So when we went to the doctor, when the doctor presented that there's an option, said, okay, you guys might want to think about ending the pregnancy. When the doctor brought that up, I knew that was serious, because I don't think that's an option that they would just present to us so casually. And the law in Indiana is that you can have up to 21 weeks and 6 days to get everything done, not to make the decision. It's 21 weeks, 6 days. So by the end of that 21 weeks, 6 days, you choose to end the pregnancy, that has to be done. So when we found out about the condition, it was 20. It's already after a little after 20 weeks. So no, I would say 21 weeks, and so we have 6 days left. So we have to make all this decision really quick. So because of the potential complication on Amy's health, we decided to end the pregnancy early, and so that was that was a very difficult time because I just like a lot of people would never expect that pregnancy to be difficult, because we know most people when they get pregnant, they post on Facebook and social media, everything is like sunshine and good, you got gender reveal party, and all that stuff. So you think everything would be good, didn't think of it like that. So after that, but shortly, so that happens so we induced labor on June. So she was born on June 3rd. We I would say stillbirth. I didn't know if she still had heartbeat before she was born, because when we went to the hospital in the morning, her heart was still beating. So we don't know because we were in the hospital for a long time, long time. So I don't know if her heart stopped beating during the day, so we don't know. But she was born on June 3rd, and shortly after that, we got pregnant again. That was during one of the support group here. We found out we were pregnant, but that didn't last very long. And the 10-week appointment, we found out there's no heartbeat on our baby. So we miscarried on the second one. We named her Evie, and then we buried both our daughters right next to each other. So that's that. So that's why I'm here today sharing my experience.
Thank you, Hansen, for sharing your story. And I'm so sorry for your losses as well. I just want to take a minute to really tell all of you how much courage it took to share your stories, especially in a public forum like this, and how grateful I am. And I'm sure that the participants listening in are also grateful for your courage and bravery for sharing that. And I just want to honor your babies that are not here with us, and for the other babies that are also, for the people on the call. Just take a minute to honor their lives and what they have done for us. It impacted our lives, even though their life was very brief. So I'm going to move on to another question. I would like to talk about your experiences with birthing professionals, whether it was, during your pregnancy, your loss, your infertility treatments, your post-loss, like providers that you came in contact with. What were your interactions like with them? Did they pay attention to you? Were you acknowledged? Were you getting support that you needed from them? So I know this is a pretty broad question, and so just share whatever is kind of coming to you right now that you would like to share. And it doesn't have to cover the whole time span.
Well, I would say for my experience, when we were at and around the hospital in Annapolis, Maryland, the staff was phenomenal. During the time that Sunita and I were at the hospital, the around-the-clock care before Anaya was born and after Anaya was born, and they were very compassionate and sensitive to the situation, which was definitely helpful in that regard to begin the coping and the healing process. But I will say, after we left the hospital, there were definitely more resources for Sunita to take advantage of. They had a support group for the moms. They had additional support groups that she could be a part of, but there wasn't really anything for me to really take advantage of. So it kind of felt like afterwards I was left on my own to try to figure out what's the next step moving forward. But uh, it was other counseling opportunities through my work as a federal employee to take advantage of, but those were few and limited as well. So uh, it feels like now there's a couple of resources, but not the plethora of resources that's available for my wife, in which she's still taking advantage of.
I would say that our birthing experience was exemplary, actually. We had nothing but kind and positive things to say about actually all of our birthing experiences. When we had London, our 5-year-old, we really loved our OBGYN. Sorry. And everybody at the clinic that we were at, which is the Marina OBGYN over here, was great. So when it was time for us to have more kids, we wanted to stay with him because of how his staff treated us and how everybody was at the hospital. And I honestly don't have a single negative thing to say. Like, even when Layden was delivered, and obviously he's delivered sleeping, all of the nurses attended to him like he was their own. Like, they helped with bathing him, and we got him baptized as well. And when we were making arrangements for, we had him cremated, and when we were making arrangements to do that, we didn't know we could bring him home. We thought that after he was born, if he born and died already, that the hospital just takes him and does whatever they want to do. And so we actually got in contact with a lady that said, at least in California, you have rights. And your rights are that because that's your child, you can bring him home and keep him for as long as you want to. And the hospital agreed. So we were able to do that, and we brought him home, and he was with us for about an hour or so he can meet his grandmother. We showed him around our house, and then the lady came in and took him. But everybody was really, really, really like supportive. And at the same time, I also know that, especially, Kylie, that my wife, one of the things she does is focus on unconscious bias in the healthcare field. And there are tales of really bad and unfortunate circumstances and situations with families that are going through perinatal loss. I think we're just lucky and fortunate that we don't have that experience. That doesn't mean that it will be great next time, but we're prepared for it at least. But yeah, I also agree with Tony that as the guy, it puts you in a position to be like the rock, even if you feel like you're drowning too. And it's a weird place to be in. So a lot of times, at least for me, a lot of my grieving had to come later. It had to be almost like a conscious decision, and it can be rough on you. I went to therapy, obviously the support groups. It's a lot. And so I think now that we're having something like this, it actually kind of brings to light some of the help that we also need as well.
can I ask Jay and Tony, and for the others too, when you share it, were you asked by providers if you were doing okay? Like, did anyone ask, are you okay? Was anyone caring about your grief, or was the focus only on your partner?
I would say if they asked, I don't remember. Does not mean they didn't. It means I might have just been in a fog. But I don't remember much attention really being paid to me. And part of it is justifiably so. I'm not the one that's delivering. So she should get more attention than I get without question. But I think sometimes people are also surprised that you're as engaged as you are as the father. So I don't think they know what to tell you or what to say.
Yeah, same sentiment as Jay. The attention was definitely more so on Sunita. Um, I was not asked, even from my primary doctor, how was I doing mentally? Uh, it sometimes, I just blocked it out because I felt, hey, I need to be strong for my family. I need to be strong for Sunita. So I can't deal with my grief at this moment. I got to make sure that she's taken care of because she had a cesarean C-section as well. So not only was she recovering physically, but she was also trying to recover mentally. So I was in full husband daddy duty, and it wasn't until years later that I really finally started to deal with my grief. And even when I started to deal with it, I didn't know where to start to go to get help. So, but again, this forum is really highlighting the huge gaps that do exist. And I do agree, attention should have been towards Anita because she was the one that delivered Anaya and she was the one that had the surgery. So, of course, most of the attention needs to be on her. But uh, it was occasions where I felt like I was on an island by myself.
Oh, thank you. And we will get to your experiences in grieving and delayed grief and stuff like that. We'll talk about that for sure. So let's just going to the providers. I mean, I guess the biggest question is in this, it's like, were you asked, were you okay? Were you offered any support or suggestions of resources? Like, here's where you can find support.
I think for me, I feel similar to what Jay and Tony expressed. That I don't think anybody specifically asked, and maybe I contributed to that to some extent because I was the one that was like pushing for resources for my partner and just asking questions about her well-being, and sort of kind of, I think, in a way deflecting attention from my own experience. But it took probably over a year before I even knew there were kind of resources for me that were not, that were specifically like geared towards either a family or a male partner perspective. So that was definitely a gap. And I'm in the healthcare sector, so even that, like, access to those resources, I still found it really difficult to find resources, first of all, for my wife, because we went to one therapist who wasn't at all like helpful, and just made things, I think, even more strained, just really pushing meds and stuff like that instead of just understanding the experience, what we went through, who we were. So that kind of was really challenging. And then we had people from the health insurance calling constantly, but trying to administer depression surveys, the PHQ-9 or the Edinburgh postpartum depression scale. And of course, what are you going to say? It's just like a week after the loss. Of course, you're going to say yes to all those questions. And then they would give us a directory of providers, but half of them weren't accepting new patients, or they weren't really skilled at dealing with perinatal loss and trauma. So that was a challenge.
Yeah, I think that is a huge challenge, right? Finding mental health providers who have knowledge of perinatal loss. You know, it's not something that they learn about in their training, that they, you know, and especially, you know, stuff that they have to learn about on their own time later on in their practice. And there's not a lot out there on men and perinatal loss in general. So thanks for sharing, Alex.
Yeah, I'd say,
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I say I share. I mean, I have similar experience with all you guys. Like doing the induced labor. Like I think the hospital staff like was great. I think that we have a nurse for every, like they got 12-hour shift, so they would come in like every 12 hours. We had a different nurse, and I think they did a great job of treating the induced labor just like any other labor. They didn't look at us, oh, like you were ending your pregnancy or anything like that. They treated like we are like legitimate parents, like human beings. So they, even when Elsie was born, like they treated her like a living baby, never treat her like just like a dead body over there. So I think during that time was great. Afterward, I mean, I don't remember I was ever asked questions like, "Were you okay?" I think, like, I think even during the time, I don't know if you guys share the same same experience. Like, as men, you kind of like a firefighter. You're just out there putting out fire. You try to solve problems like that. You got no time to think about other stuff. So, and I think those people might know that, so they don't even bother to ask you questions. But I think even afterwards, I mean, there's nobody from health like that. Healthcare providers gonna ask me if I was okay. You know, I think even for my wife Amy, she has to go actively go seek out the resources for herself. So I think that's one thing is like I learned from this is that you have to be actively seek out to help yourself, because if you don't ask, people just assume you're okay. That's what I think.
Yeah, the assumption that you're okay, or just the over focus on the birthing parent. Yeah. So, I'm getting some messages in the chat box just asking bereaved fathers who are joining us, like, were they offered resources? And, you know, no, they were not. And anything that they found was more targeted towards the birthing partner, their wife, or their partner. I do have a question from somebody. Do you, for support groups, okay, 3 or 4 of you have done a couple support group with us. Would you find the couple support group helpful, or would you prefer a men's only group? Would you attend a men's only group? What are your thoughts about that?
You know, so I was thinking back the 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago, when we lost our son, that nobody really offered us support groups. And then we sort of looked around, but we weren't in the headspace to do like dive deep into like researching and all of that. We were just dealing with our emotions and processing. But I wish I had known about RTZ, because I only found that in 2020. Well, my wife primarily did the research and found it, but it's interesting. I'm thinking back, even in my hospital, we have some resources, some centers that specialize in child and infant loss. And even that wasn't even provided in any discharge records. And I'm involved in some way to try to like change that as a provider there. But yeah, there's just kind of a lack of attention to what happens after the family leaves the hospital. But just going back to your question, I think for me, it was really helpful to be in a support group with my partner, because I did not, honestly, I had trouble in the first few sessions just talking about this openly. I'd not done that previously. 2 years went by. I sort of just like, you know, buried it, and I didn't know how to talk about it. I didn't know the words to use, and I was a little hesitant to bring it up with my close friends because I was worried that they would respond in a way that would anger me, or just like, you know, say something without understanding it. So I sort of didn't address it. But I needed her to kind of, because she's the more expressive. She's like, she has amazing emotional intelligence, so she was able to talk about this experience, and kind of gave me the window to kind of add, you know, my voice to that as well. And it was really helpful to hear from the other participants, the both sides of the couples. And that was the first time that I met other men in that kind of setting who were able to share openly.
I think it's great to do this couple support group together, because I feel like when you do support group, I'm not saying you're forced to share, but you get to learn your spouse better during that time, like, because communication is the key, right? If you don't talk, like, you don't really know what each other person is thinking. So like even in the support group, like, you listen to other couples share the experience, so then you feel like, okay, you're not alone, you're going through the same thing. So I appreciate that about the group. And because if you ask me if I would go to support group by myself, like at that time, I probably not, because I think as men, the society is pretty like, I know some of you have already mentioned before, it's like you have to be the rock, you have to be the supporter. Like my coworker, like asked, like, hey, you gotta be strong for Amy, but nobody said that. No, they people just assume that, man, you're okay because you're strong, you can get through yourself. Like, I didn't realize at that time, but I think like for men, you grieve differently. Like, you grieve later on. You don't grieve right away. Like you like at least for me personally, I process this thing more slowly. Like, I have no problem of talking about it to anyone people ask me. Sometimes it helps to talk it out, because if you don't talk, you build it up inside, then like you have nowhere to get it out. So I think that's when people do something stupid to hurt themselves. Like, we don't want that. But so like, I have no trouble talking about my experience, but just feel like, because everybody assumes you're okay, everybody assumes that you're strong, you will get to a point that you feel like you're in an island, that nobody know how you feel. Like, you can't really talk to other people, because it's not like you ask you if you're okay, then you say, yes, I am all right. Then people just go away. Sometimes if you want to go find somebody to talk to, nobody wants to listen to you, because like, nobody wants to listen to your bad news. You're ruining my day. You think about that. Like, a lot of time we go talk to people. When we ask people how you doing, we don't expect people to say, oh man, my day sucks. Then in your head say, now you just ruined my day. I didn't ask you to give me good bad news. So I think it's a two-way street. So if you can have a group of people that share your similar experience, that know where you're coming from, it's better that way. So you can actually get it out. Like, you might not get any solution back, but you can get it out. That help you kind of release some of the problem that build up inside.
Well, and Dennis, who's joining us in the audience, he he's saying in the beginning, he preferred having both of them there, right? His partner and him. But as time goes on, he thinks a men's only group might be helpful. And that seems like maybe you do need your partner there, right? Because it's scary to go into a group and talk about the worst thing that's ever happened. And especially as it's also closer to your loss and you're raw and all that. And, but then a men's only group. Yeah, Jason's saying it would be helpful to remove the desire to protect and support our partners. We can easily hide behind the focusing on the needs of our partners. And so maybe like a little bit time goes by, it's like just for you, your self-care, honoring your grief journey. So that could be, it could be something really important and powerful as you navigate that. That it's not always about her, you know, that your grieving is as important as her grieving, and your loss is as deep and heartbreaking as her loss. Like it's, and it's easy to get lost or forgotten behind that. So let's talk, well, one other thing I want to add, and Jessica, thank you. I think Marianne, you said this. So excuse my incorrect language of asking the question, you know, suggesting like, are you okay from a provider? Like maybe better language around that would be, how are you doing? Right? Because as she points out, we're not okay. Like I even feel now during COVID, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm not okay. So no, we're not okay. And just acknowledging that. So how are you doing? How can I support you? Is there anything you need from me right now? So asking more open-ended questions, just for the providers in the audience to be aware of that. So let's talk a little bit about your grieving journey. So you've mentioned, yes, okay, before I start, Tony has to go to a wedding and he has to log off in a few minutes. So Tony, thank you for being here. I'm grateful for you taking time and sharing with us. And any last words before you go?
Yes, sorry I have to log off. The wedding thing is, you know, participating in this. So wish me luck as the best man. So, but with that, I just want to thank each and every one of the guys, Alex, Hansen, and Jay. Thank you so much for sharing your forum, your platform. Thank you, Kylie, for setting this up. This has been so beneficial. If you want to find out more information about Anaya's project, you can email us at info@anayasproject.org. Also, you can look up our website, which is Anaya's Project, ANAYSAS project. It's all one.org. So, and you can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn as well. So definitely look us up. And we do plan to set up a men's group that will focus strictly on the men. It's going to be called the Men's Haven, which is going to launch in June of this year. So Kylie, I'll share that information with you, and we'll have it on our website as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Tony, and good luck this afternoon.
Thank you. Have a good one, everyone.
Bye. Okay. Come back. So I wanted to talk about the grieving journey, your grieving journey. And it has been mentioned a few times, right? The man has to be the rock. The man has to be strong. For our partner is often you will serve as the communicator between your partner and your community, whoever that, you know, or your doctors, whoever that is, right? You're going in between. And it's also been mentioned that your grieving was delayed. And so which can come as a result of focusing on in the crisis on your wife, your partner. And so I just want to open it up for you all to share, like, what has your grieving journey been like? Was your grief delayed? Did you know what you needed in the beginning? How have you learned what you needed? Just share a little bit. And you all are in different, I know Jay and Hansen, you guys are very close to your losses. It hasn't been that long. And so you're definitely in it right now. So I just love to hear more about that.
Okay. So as a point of comparison, my wife she's a delayed griever too. When we found out the news, I was upset, but I was thinking about, like, okay, well, okay, he's had a stroke, but he hasn't passed away. So what does that leave us as alternatives and options? So I was sad, I was upset, but I wasn't there yet. That's actually when it hit for her. And then 2 weeks later, when we go back to a follow up, and then they say his heart stopped beating, that's when I broke down in the clinic. But she became very resilient. And so we delivered the next day. And when we're at the hospital, we're actually not in a good mood, but we were holding it together. Like, we were able to make jokes and stuff. And everybody kept coming up to us like, wow, you guys are so handling this so well. Like, if it was me, like this, and this. And I'm like, yeah, well, we want to be there for him. And that means being present and trying to be as emotionally clear as possible. So we took pictures and videos holding him and everything, and came back and we were okay, I guess. On the Monday when they brought him back, we were really excited to have him here at the house. Like I said, we only had an hour with him. But when the lady who was going to come and cremate him took him, we both lost it. I wrote him a letter that I wanted him to be cremated with, and I couldn't put the letter in the bag when the lady came. Like, my hand would not do it, and I just dropped, and she did too. And I always remember that because I don't know how I got through all that stuff. I have no idea. Like, to this day, like I said, I've done therapy, done support groups, but I really don't know. And she had a C-section as well, so a lot of things at the beginning are to make sure she's physically okay. You have to wrap her, you have to make sure she's off her feet. So there's still a part of you that has to kind of push it to the side and become caretaker. Like, okay, we were actually fortunate at the time that my mother-in-law came and stayed with us for that first month, because there were times where I couldn't get out of bed. There were times where I was there, but I wasn't there. Like, I was disassociated, I felt bad for my 5-year-old because he knew what was going on, but you can only say so much. And at that time, he knew neither of us were available. As the guy, I'm not, and I also agree to, my wife is extremely emotionally intelligent. And so for her, she was in like 5 support groups immediately. He was like, oh, okay, bye, 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 bye. And me, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'll figure it out, or I'll deal with it somehow. And then she actually assigned us to the couples group with you, Kylie. And I did not know I could be someone that could be that articulate and advocate for my son. So I thank you for that. It still hurts. It's still raw. I feel really raw right now, actually, talking about it. But we need support groups for couples and for men. To be honest, if there wasn't a couples group I did first, I don't think I would have went to a men's one at any point. I needed the support and kind of the introduction into this entire process with her first before I felt comfortable doing it on my own. I also, because I have a kid on the way, I don't know where to place certain emotions. Like, I'm really happy here, but I also still wish my son was here too. And so a lot of my day is spent trying to juggle the dichotomy of both feelings. I may never be able to, and it might just be the way it goes. But it's still pretty rough. And we lost a lot of friends and family in the process. A lot, almost everybody, to be honest with you, because they did not know how to support us through this journey. And it felt like when this happens to you, you're kind of speaking in another language to somebody. They literally cannot understand you. And so we've had to go through a lot of reshuffling. Some people came back and it's made it easier. But I would say the support system is like the most important thing you'll have in this process. That's really the only way to get through it.
And I think having a support system of other grieving parents is so important, because as you like, the other people they can't understand unless they've been through it. And you don't know what you need and want necessarily. You're just trying to survive. But you need to be with other people who understand.
Yeah.
And I just want to say, this is just coming to me because you are going through a pregnancy after loss, that on the Return to Zero Hope website, there is a webinar. There's a page about pregnancy after loss, but there's a pretty in-depth webinar for providers supporting parents going through pregnancy after loss. But I know you would get a lot out of it, Jay, but it just kind of normalizes the emotional journey that you're going through. And it's complex. Like, you're having to grieve at the same time and then have hope and optimism for the future. And you have to, sometimes you have to kind of put a pause on your grieving, because you're like, in order to process what's going on. And then when, if and when the baby comes healthy, for me, all this grief came in that I just like pushed to the side, and it's unexpected, and you're relieved and happy, but it's not exactly the same as you thought. So I know this is not a pregnancy after loss discussion, but it's really important that we talk about that as well. And just for people out there watching this, that does exist. And it's important to understand, because that is also a very isolating experience. So Alex and Hansen, back to kind of like what your grieving journey has looked like.
Well, for me, I actually not sure, like, I don't even know how to describe it, because like because like we all have busy life, so we all have things to do. So sometimes you have to compartmentalize your feeling, like, okay, when I have to work, I need to focus on certain things. And I think communication and honesty is the key. They are the keys here. Like, you have to be able to be vulnerable to other people, even though if they don't want to hear your stuff, but you can kind of give them the overview. Like, you don't have to come out and say, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm fine." I don't think you need to fake it that way. Nowadays, when people ask me how I'm doing, I don't think I have told people that I am fine anymore. I just say I am okay. Because I'm not going to use the word fine. I'm not going to tell people I'm doing well, I'm doing fine, because I don't think I will ever get back to that point. Okay is the best that I can go to, because that's the way it is. And then like so another way that for me to grieve is I think I'm doing a better job on communicating with my wife Amy. So like a lot long ago, I told her, hey, not it wasn't an argument or a fight, more like a discussion. And I just told her that, you know what, like seems like the society give women more leeway when you grieve. So, oh, you know what? If you don't want to do this, and don't do it. If you want to quit your job, go quit your job. If you don't want to do that, and do that, and don't do that. And I told her that, you know what? As men, I don't have that option. The pressure is on me, because if you don't work, I am the sole supporter of the household. So cannot I cannot be down. I have to go do what I got to do what I got to do. So I think this is one thing that I realized that during this time is that that's why I say it's a lonely world, because nobody could be able no like, nobody is going to be able to help you for that part. You have to do it yourself. No matter what, like you might be down or you might not feel like you want to go to work, but you have to do it. So that's one thing that I learned the most. And I think we are very fortunate that we have a group of friends that I know, like Jay talked about, like he and Millie lost a lot of friends. I think we're fortunate that we haven't had that happen. Like our church small group, we're very fortunate that the people in our church group, they were all very supportive. Like they understand what's going what is going on, because like when it comes to Christian community, there's really no gray area when it comes to like these issues, especially at the end of our pregnancy. Like this is like the death sentence that you're not doing it right. And so, and I think we're very fortunate to have a group that completely understood like what we were going through. I'm not saying they completely understand everything, but they understood like this is not a black and white issue. They support us fully. I mean, there are some people that's not too supportive, but that's a whole other story. But as I think that part we were very fortunate, and I think like we don't have to put another thing I noticed that we don't have to put on a mask to say, oh, I am okay. Like even if if you guys ever read the Bible in the book of Job, when God let Satan completely torch him, and in the Old Testament, in the old days, and when people hurting or grieve, they tear off their clothes. They let the whole world know they are hurting. So I think for us, it's okay to do that, even though the society say it's not. But I think it is important to let people know that you are hurting, so they either know not to bother you or know what to say. And I read the chat room that Scott said like some people that have never gone through what you've gone through and tell you that you need to you need to move on. And I think that's a good indication that maybe those are the people that you can just like cut it off from your life, at least for now at the moment. So I think this is, I mean, we like it's every day is different. Like you got good day and bad day. So and another thing I told my friends that I was really honest with them is like I have trouble. Like you go on social media, you see people showing the picture of them being pregnant, announcing their pregnancy. I'm not trying to. I don't wish anybody ill on their pregnancy, but in my head I said, oh, good for you, nothing bad happened. So like right on. So like it's just some sort of, I got like some sort of jealousy in my head going on. And I told all my other friends that, you know what, like from now on, if we get pregnant again, there's no joy in it. We will never experience the joy because the joy has already been taken out. It's more like anxiety and nervousness because you just try to make it day by day because you don't know if even it's okay today, you don't know what's gonna happen next second. So that's what I'm feeling right now.
It's like the loss, you've lost your innocence, you know, with your losses. And yeah, I agree. It's hard to find joy and there's so much anxiety. I just want to point out a couple things that have been coming up. First of all, it's just validating the fact that relationships change after loss. And we live in a society where people are very uncomfortable talking about grief and death. They don't know what to say. And sometimes it comes from a loving place that they will want to say something, and what comes out of their mouth is actually pretty hurtful and can be harmful. And it isn't always coming from a harmful place. They don't know what to say. And I think if there are people in our lives that we care about and want to be in our lives, there may need to be some advocating for yourself and your needs with those people, teaching them, guiding them, because they don't know. And like on our website, there's a section devoted to family and friends that talks about like, what is the loss experience like? What can you do to support a grieving couple? What are things to say and not to say? But these are things that are not talked about. And a grieving person shouldn't have to be doing this, but unfortunately, sometimes we do, you know, and sometimes people may be important to you in your life. And I remember Millie talking about this and her just really being open about like, you know what, I care about you, I love you, I can't go to X event, or I can't really be with you, or I can't be here for you right now, but I still love you, right? So communicating to those people, like, what do you need for your heart, your mind, your body, in these relationships, and communicating. But I will also say that you don't always know what you need. You don't. And it's, I think a lot of this journey is about becoming self-aware and listening to your bodies. And what are they telling you about what you need? So it's a process. I mean, I feel the same way. I was, you know, I was shut down for like 9 years, not dealing with anything. So it's a process for sure. Alex.
Yeah, so just, you know, my own process with the grief and bereavement. I mean, in the beginning, it was the most intense and the most kind of explosive in those first few days, of course. And we decided on cremation, and we had a few of our closest friends and family members come, and you know, we tried to memorialize that event as much as we could. And we had some amazing support from one of our friends who just like came up with the ideas we needed at that time, took away some of the burden of planning and organizing these things, and you know, helping us just express things through poetry and things like that. And I mean, that felt in that moment after that was that ceremony was finished, it felt like I experienced a little bit of a release. But I think I was naively like thinking, okay, this is, you know, now I could go on with my life. And what I did was jumped right into work like 4 days later, and just worked harder than I did in the past. And, you know, just tried to be 100% focused and say, okay, like, let's fix this going forward. Let's figure out, let's start planning. What are we going to do? My wife's journey was completely different. She was just going through something unimaginable for me. I mean, I could see it, I just didn't know what to do with it, because she was just basically an emotional train wreck. I mean, her body had all the scars and all the effects of pregnancy, but no baby there. And it was just like the trauma of seeing, you know, that space that you created in your house, and just walking past it and all the planning that went into it. And like, for me, I almost felt like a sense of guilt, like, my God, like she, you know, she's, you know, her body thinks she's just delivered a baby, and, you know, she has milk and all of this thing. And what am I doing? Like, I need to be doing everything I can to help her and just be present. So I had this like dualistic, kind of this conflict within me. Like, on one hand, my everything was that my whole being was like telling me, okay, just move on, like, get back to work. And unfortunately, where I work, it's in the same hospital where we delivered. So I was sort of subjecting myself to this trauma of having to walk by the same place where we delivered. And I was experiencing these low-level anxiety attacks, but not really recognizing it, just thinking, okay, it's just diverting my focus to the patients and the people I had to attend to. So, I mean, things kind of went at that pace for a while, actually. And it wasn't until I began to get plugged in with like the RTZ support group and figure out, you know, the language that goes into discussing these topics. And, you know, as a lost father, and, you know, how to connect with other people, and resources. I don't think my healing really like started for the first couple of years until I got to that step and allowed myself to open up to those sorts of experiences and therapies. And you know, what else helped is soon after we had lost our son, is we began to explore the option of adoption, because we, at that point, we knew we wanted desperately to become parents, but we could not risk having to go through more infertility treatments and possibly risk this whole thing happening again. And actually, part of that was helpful. We ended up actually, fortunately, having a really good experience going through the adoption process, and we're matched with just the most amazing birth parents. And we have a 2-year-old now that, you know, we it doesn't take away the pain of what happened, but having that in our lives, it sort of that becomes the predominant sound or emotion now, and it kind of drowns out some of the sorrow into the background. So I guess I'll end there, just because I know time is a little short.
Well, I think we need to have a part 2 of this, because I have a long list of other questions that I think we need to talk about. So I'm hoping that you will join me again and do this. But so I typed this in the chat box. I was hoping to end at 30, just in respect for everybody's time. But I did want to have time for questions. So a lot of the questions are going to be probably saved for part 2. But if you have anything that you'd like to ask one of these fathers on the panel, we can do that right now. And, but, you know, I think some of this is going to have to be left for another time, as we dig deeper into like what are helpful ways of coping, digging deeper into relationships, what does that look like from the father's side? And, you know, I just know that we are, you know, Alex, Hansen, Jay, and Tony, who left, we're so grateful to have you here with us and sharing your stories and being so open and vulnerable. My gosh, it takes so much courage and strength. So thank you. So does anyone have any questions now or future questions for a part 2? And yeah, and just so much love coming in for all of you.
One thing I just wanted to add to that I've intended to mention is, there's a lot of parents who struggle, who go through this crisis in their lives. Another thing that sometimes traumatizes them is the issue of, parental leave or family leave. We dealt with this too in our organizations. It wasn't really a recognized situation where they would automatically grant you leave. We had to kind of, go through a lot of HR steps, and that was just terribly insulting. And just having to tell your boss, especially from my wife's side, that I don't have a baby in my house, but I went through this experience and I cannot go to work in 2 weeks. I'm not, mentally, emotionally prepared. And that is, I think, for the clinicians, providers, that's something that is definitely needs to be discussed and advocated for. And definitely, as a provider, I give letters and all kinds of things now, documentation, that anything that will help to give as much time as needed, because you probably need to take more time than the average person takes for maternity or paternity leave after this.
That's so important, Alex. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, Marianne, trauma is a huge part of the perinatal loss experience. Like that, we definitely acknowledge that and talk about it a lot within Return to Zero, understanding that, that there's the mental health picture is a overlapping situation of grief, right? This out of order loss we've experienced of our child, trauma. It is almost always a traumatic experience, and perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, which also impact men, which we didn't talk about today, but this is something men do. There is paternal postpartum depression that does occur, even if there's not a live baby. And the rates of also of PTSD in men who experience a loss are the same as women who experience a loss. So yes, trauma, we do talk about this. Thank you, Dennis. Thanks for sharing your daughter, Isabel. And I know Taylor was here earlier, and Taylor's baby, Luca. Okay, so I'm going to stop the recording now. And actually, before I stop, I do want to add 2 more things. Number 1, for those of you who are new to Return to Zero, I really encourage you to go to our website. There's a lot of resources on there, just information to help you understand and have language to put to your experience. So there is a section just for parents. We also offer webinars that are free on a regular basis, and we have kind of a webinar shop with all of our previous webinars that you might find some information in there that you want to watch and listen to. We also offer support groups, and it's really apparent to me that we need to get a men's only support group going. And so I'm hoping that that can be something that happens within 2021, just maybe something in the fall. So again, I just want to express my gratitude to the 4 of you who participated on this panel. Like, really, my heart goes out to you, and I'm so grateful. And then finally, just asking for donations, that these webinars are provided free of charge now, and that we are a nonprofit organization that relies on the donation from people like you. So if you felt that this information today was helpful, if you wouldn't mind making a donation of any amount, really, like every dollar counts, and that you can do that on our website, rtzhope.org. So thank you so much.